In a time when President Donald Trump is doubling down on his America First policies and tariff strategies, the world isn't standing still. Behind closed doors, China and Brazil just made a move that could redraw the entire map of global oil influence. Here's why this matters. Brazil is sitting on some of the richest untapped oil reserves on Earth, especially in what's called the pre-salt region deep beneath the Atlantic. We're talking billions of barrels. It's enough oil to make any country a kingmaker in the energy world. And who's coming to claim it? China, the world's biggest energy consumer. While the US keeps picking trade fights under Trump's current presidency, slapping on new tariffs and threatening allies and rivals alike, China is doing something different. It's buying loyalty, access, and control. This deal isn't just about oil, it's about revenge economics. China remembers the sting of Trump's tariffs from his first term. And now, under his second term in 2025, China is playing smarter, not louder. So while Washington is busy with politics, China is locking in decades of cheap energy, and the US may have just handed over its oil influence on a silver platter. And this story, it's only getting started. To understand how this oil deal happened, we have to go back a few years, to the trade war days between the US and China. During Donald Trump's first term as president from 2018 to 2020, he launched a massive tariff battle with China. The goal? Punish China for what he called unfair trade practices. So the US slapped tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. China didn't take that lightly. They hit back with their own tariffs, especially on US farm products like soybeans and beef. And guess who got caught in the middle of all this? Brazil. Brazil is one of the world's top agricultural exporters. When the US and China started fighting, China stopped buying as much from American farmers. That should have been Brazil's big break, right? But it wasn't that simple. Because of the chaos, prices dropped, and trade routes got messy. Brazil lost over $3 billion in agricultural exports. That's a huge blow to a country that relies heavily on selling soy, beef, and other products abroad. Brazil felt burned. They started to question whether the US was a reliable partner, especially when policy could flip overnight with a tweet. One Brazilian official even said, "We won't bet on a partner that changes the rules overnight." So, as Trump returned to office in 2025 and renewed his tough stance on trade, Brazil didn't want to take more chances. They turned to someone more stable, someone with deep pockets, long-term plans, and zero tweets: China. And China was more than ready to welcome Brazil into its energy circle. Now here's the part that stings, because the US had the upper hand. For years, Brazil looked up to the United States as a partner. They shared deals, held energy talks, and explored future cooperation. But somewhere along the line, the US just backed away. Under both Trump's first presidency and again now in his second term, key energy talks with Brazil were either canceled or pushed aside. The US seemed too focused on trade battles with China, Europe, and even Canada to notice what was slipping away in South America. And while America hesitated, China acted. Over the past few years, China poured $7 billion into Brazil's energy infrastructure, building ports, modernizing refineries, and laying down oil transport routes. These aren't small investments, they're long-term commitments, the kind that create loyalty. Think of it like this. The US was offered front-row seats to a blockbuster oil opportunity, but instead of taking the tickets, they argued over popcorn prices. So China walked in, sat down, and bought out the theater. American oil companies had the chance to work closely with Brazil, develop joint ventures, and gain access to one of the largest untapped oil regions in the world. But Washington's mixed signals and unpredictable policies made investors nervous. One by one, US firms pulled back. Meanwhile, China showed up with cash, patience, and a long-term vision. In the end, Brazil didn't pick China because they had to. They picked China because America didn't show up. And that one move is now reshaping who controls the future of oil. So what's actually in this game-changing deal between Brazil and China? Let's break it down. First, the big win for China, a 20-year guaranteed supply of Brazilian oil. And not just any oil. This is pre-salt oil, some of the cleanest and most valuable crude on the market. What's even more shocking is that the price is locked in. That means China gets stable, predictable oil prices no matter how crazy the global market gets. That's like locking in gas prices before a hurricane hits. When everyone else is panicking, China will be sitting calm, fully fueled. But it's not a one-way street. Brazil gets a lot in return. China has agreed to transfer energy technology, especially in offshore drilling and refining, areas where China has become very advanced. Brazil also gets billions in infrastructure loans to expand its ports, pipelines, and energy grid. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Some analysts warn this could be a form of debt trap diplomacy. That's when China lends huge amounts of money, and if the country can't repay, China takes control of assets, like ports or pipelines. We've seen this happen in Angola and Venezuela, where China gained deep influence after the local governments struggled with debt. But Brazil may be different. Unlike Venezuela, Brazil has a stronger economy and democratic checks. And unlike Angola, Brazil isn't handing over control. It's setting terms. That's why some experts say this isn't a trap. It's a calculated trade. China gets energy security, Brazil gets modern tools and funding to become a global energy player. In short, both sides win. But the real loser, the US, which once had the chance to strike this exact kind of deal and passed it up. This deal isn't just a headline. It's a blow to the United States' global energy power. Let's start with leverage. For years, the United States counted on countries like Brazil to help offset OPEC plus production cuts. That gave Washington some control over global oil prices. If OPEC pulled back, the United States could call on friendly nations to pump more and balance the market. But now, one of those key players, Brazil, is lining up behind China. It gets worse. This deal doesn't use US dollars. China is paying Brazil in yuan, not greenbacks. That may sound like a small detail, but it's actually a big deal. Most global oil is traded in US dollars, a system known as the petrodollar. If more countries start trading oil in other currencies, the dollar could lose its dominance. And when the dollar weakens globally, it affects everything from US interest rates to the cost of imports to the strength of American influence. Think of it like this. For decades, the United States wrote the rules of the oil game. Now China is building its own league, with its own rules. And Brazil just signed up. Want proof? Just look at a map. China now has long-term oil agreements or port access in Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Iraq, Angola, and now Brazil. Meanwhile, the United States is watching its influence shrink in key regions. Allies are becoming competitors. Former partners are going silent. America's energy strategy is starting to look like a game of chess, where the opponent has all the queens. Here's what most people are missing. Brazil isn't just a middleman in this China deal, it's the quiet winner of the whole game. President Lula da Silva has made it clear, Brazil isn't choosing sides, it's playing both. In his own words, we're not pawns, we're kings. That's not just political talk, it's strategy. By leaning toward China, Brazil is signaling to Washington, if you want to keep us close, offer us something better. It's a classic power move. They're using China as leverage to negotiate better trade terms from the United States, not out of loyalty to China, but out of self-interest. And here's the wild part. This entire shift was triggered by Trump's own tariffs. Back in 2018, the Trump administration tried to punish China with sweeping trade duties. But the ripple effect pushed China toward new partners, and Brazil stepped up. Now, Trump is in office again in 2025, and the tariffs are still on the table. But instead of isolating China, those moves have pushed Brazil to rise as a major energy player with more global clout than ever. In trying to weaken China, the United States accidentally supercharged Brazil. It's like lighting a fire to chase off a wolf, only to discover you burned down your own fence. And now your neighbor's house is looking real cozy to the wolf. Lula saw the opening. He didn't panic. He played the long game. And now Brazil has stronger trade with China, rising energy exports, and the attention of both superpowers. The United States wanted to control the board, but Brazil flipped the script, and might now be the one setting the rules. This isn't the first time the United States tried to use economics as a weapon, and ended up shooting itself in the foot. Let's rewind to 1973. Back then, the United States supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. In response, Arab oil producers slapped an embargo on the United States. Suddenly, America's gas stations had mile-long lines, prices tripled, and people were literally fighting at the pump. That crisis changed U.S. foreign policy forever. The lesson? Economic weapons are double-edged swords. Fast forward to today, and we're watching a similar backfire in slow motion. Trump's tariffs were designed to punish China and protect American jobs. And sure, in the short term, they put pressure on Chinese imports. But long term, they pushed China to find new partners. And Brazil, left stranded in the tariff crossfire, was more than happy to make a new friend. So instead of isolating China, the United States unintentionally built a bridge between two major economies, Brazil and China. Even US policy experts are starting to admit it. One said recently, Trump's tariffs were a short-term win and a long-term disaster. It's like trying to block one river, only to watch it carve out a new path, even stronger and faster than before. So here we are in 2025. Trump is back, the tariffs are still in play, and the United States is once again betting on pressure instead of partnership. But history shows, when America tries to control the world economy with force, it often ends up driving others into each other's arms. So is it game over for the United States? Not quite. There might still be a chance to turn things around, but it won't be easy. President Trump, back in office in 2025, faces tough options. One way is to re-engage Brazil with better deals, more attractive trade terms, investments, or partnerships. But here's the catch. China already has a huge head start with billions invested in a locked-in oil supply. Catching up would be like trying to overtake a marathon leader who's already miles ahead. Another approach is using financial pressure through institutions like the IMF or World Bank to sway Brazil's choices. But this is risky. Pressuring Brazil could backfire, pushing more countries in the global south closer to China, deepening the divide and making future deals even harder. At this point, many experts say the ship may have sailed. America's missed chances, combined with China's aggressive moves and Brazil's smart diplomacy, have created a new reality. Still, it's not too late to adapt. If the United States can change course and stop relying solely on tariffs and economic pressure. The question is, will Washington learn this lesson before it's too late? We're witnessing a major shift in how energy power works around the world. The old system, where the United States guaranteed access to oil and set the rules, is changing fast. Now, countries like China and the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are creating new trade networks that bypass Western financial systems and currencies. For example, India and Russia are already trading oil without using US dollars, a clear sign that the petrodollar era is being challenged. China's strategy is clear. Lock in access to resources before the United States even notices. It's like securing your food and water supply before a storm hits, so you don't have to rely on anyone else when times get tough. The 21st century won't be about who has the most oil in the ground anymore. It will be about who controls the supply chains, the trade routes, and the technology that makes energy flow. And right now, the United States is losing its grip on those crucial parts. The global energy game is no longer a simple story of oil fields and pipelines. It's about influence, alliances, and who gets to write the rules for the future. So, what does all this mean for you? If you're an investor, it's time to think beyond U.S. energy stocks. Brazil's booming oil sector and China's growing energy markets are creating new opportunities. Look at Brazilian ETFs or Chinese oil futures. These could be the next big moves as the energy world shifts. For policymakers, the message is clear. Wake up. Economic wars like tariffs don't just hurt your rivals, they can seriously backfire and damage your own interests. It's time to rethink strategy, build partnerships, and avoid pushing key players into your competitors' arms. And for you, the viewer, this deal is a major sign that the global energy balance is changing, and fast. Will this trigger a U.S. energy crisis? Or is the panic overblown? I want to hear what you think. Agree? Disagree? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, next week, we'll dive into how Saudi Arabia is quietly betting against the dollar in this evolving global energy game. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.